Today, I want to deep dive the conversation around Nintendo and how they may choose to reveal their successor to the Nintendo Switch in addition to a launch timeline based off all of the different reports we've seen circulate online. You're probably well familiar with the fact that once upon a time, the internal reports were end of 2024, Nintendo is ramping up for Nintendo Switch 2, and it would launch around the holiday season or at least towards the back half of the year. Now, we had those reports circulating from Bloomberg, VGC, Eurogamer, many others, credible outlets, not people who are just going to write an article for absolutely no reason, but publications that have contacts with game developers who would happen to know or at least have a loose timeline of when their game needs to be ready by, communicated to them from Nintendo. We even had a GDC Game Developer Conference survey hit that actually surveyed what systems game developers were currently working on, and 8% or over a couple hundred developers all answered that they were currently developing games for Nintendo Switch 2, which we saw a similar survey to that launched for Nintendo Switch 1 before we knew what that console was, and we were still calling it the NX, and it was a lesser amount of developers that were answering that they were developing for Nintendo's new console back then. So clearly Nintendo's gearing things up behind the scenes to reveal this thing. You just have to stop and look around at their current 2024 games lineup to realize that everything we have this year so far and everything we know about this year so far from a first-party Nintendo perspective outside of Princess Peach Showtime is a port or remaster, and this is a classic Nintendo move when they need to get their big devs and creative minds in a room together working on what is truly next to launch the next gen console, talking about the big next 3D Mario, talking about the big next Mario Kart, the next Animal Crossing, the next Super Smash Bros, something Zelda for the console. So naturally, Nintendo will give kind of their B teams, if you will, an easier port or remaster type of project where they know the scope of the game, they know what to do, and they just have to go modernize that from a visual perspective and also from a controller perspective, and they package it up and ship it out to us at most of them full price, with the exception of Metroid Prime Remastered, which is a steal in my opinion of a $40 retail for a great remaster. But you get the idea. Outside of rumors and reports, we have a lot of evidence suggesting that Nintendo is approaching that transition year very quickly for their next generation hardware. Now, in terms of which reports we actually have to go off of suggesting that we are at least somewhat close to the reveal for this hardware, well, it's not many, because you might remember there was a claim in March that the Nintendo Switch 2 would have some kind of reveal event. This was, of course, coming from Nate the Hate, but he quickly, after putting out that report, made it very clear that he wasn't sure if that was still the plan, because that's when everything shifted behind the scenes. And I would like to quickly call attention to one source who is the big outstanding name around suggesting that we might be in for a June reveal for this Nintendo Switch 2 presentation, or at least reveal trailer of some sort, or just Nintendo coming out and confirming that it really does exist. Well, this is none other than Brazil over on Fami Boards, who was the original source that suggested that there was an internal delay for Nintendo's next-gen hardware and that developers were now being told early 2025, specifically as soon as March. Now, shortly after Brazil put this piece of information out there, we then saw all of the big publications start to go and corroborate that with their own independent sources. They were not just talking to the same sources that this individual supposedly has, but independently verifying whether or not the dev contacts that they could talk to directly also heard the same thing. And that's whenever the floodgates opened and we saw Bloomberg, Reuters, VGC, Eurogamer, and just about every other outlet you can think of also report that that is indeed what happened, and Nintendo did decide to shift this back to an early 2025 launch. Well, the outstanding post from Brazil that has yet to come to fruition at the middle part of April, mind you, is the following. Here's what I've heard post direct in April. General or mini, I don't know. Indie World before that, probably March. June for Switch 2 reveal. Everything in flux always, but I'm feeling good. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. In Indie World, he claimed in March that did not happen clearly, and that is true, but he also did clarify that there are two separate sources, one claiming the Indie World would happen, and that still could happen in the supposed timeline. He was guessing March, not saying that he heard March, but supposedly an Indie World would be coming before a mainline direct. Then we would get some kind of mainline direct, at least from a first party perspective from Nintendo, meaning it's either going to be branded Nintendo Direct Mini or just a general Nintendo Direct, but it will have first party games It is not the partner showcase format that we saw them do in February, and at the time of filming, we have a couple weeks left in April where this could theoretically happen. So the unfortunate part is if we do see April come and go with no mainline or mini Nintendo Direct, at that point, we are truly in the dark with reports in terms of what we should be expecting from Nintendo, not only in their first party games announcements, which we know their lineup through June, but past that, we have zero clue on what they might be marketing or promoting to us. Not to mention there is a missing April game. Normally Nintendo likes to stick to at least one first party published game per month. You see that in their release calendar. Well, April's missing that, and it would be the perfect opportunity to shadow drop a first party game. Looking at you, Metroid Prime 2 or 3 in a bundle pack for the month of April, and that would be their first party title. But again, if April comes and goes and we don't see any of that, at that point we have to assume whoever's Brazil's contacts are do not have the current plan for Nintendo, and maybe that was once the plan, but it could have internally shifted again, or it could be bad info altogether. So you have to keep all of that stuff in mind. But I do think that by time the investors briefing comes up in May, where Nintendo does have to forecast their numbers for the upcoming fiscal year of sales, they will definitely be getting a grilling from investors after 7 full years since launch of the Nintendo Switch. What is your next step in terms of your plan to shift hardware numbers? Because while the Nintendo Switch is still performing very well for a console this late in its life cycle, it's very unprecedented. It is not doing at all in any way, shape, or form the numbers that it once was at its peak, and it's clearly on a year-on-year decline when it comes to console sales. And this year we have no major heavy hitter game to maybe justify people to go pick up one for the first time, like we had for Tears of the Kingdom in 2023, and then Mario Wonder to close out the year. So investors will want to know, and I do think we will at least get some kind of comment or heads up from Nintendo around, we are developing our next generation hardware and we will market it when we are ready, and it's codenamed this. Or they may say something like, the forecast that we have for our sales numbers does not include next generation hardware, and we will adjust once we are ready to talk about next generation hardware. Like, we should get some kind of indication from them around what their plans are by May, one way or another. And if the April Direct doesn't happen, at that point we are going to just have to wait and see when Nintendo might reveal this console, and they very well could pull a copy and paste from the Nintendo Switch, where they drop a first look trailer in October and then it is out in March of the following year. Of course, we already knew that the code name at that point in time of the console, so I'm still thinking we learn at least that in between now and October, but I am still hopeful for the June reveal. But I will definitely be lowering my expectations on that June reveal if we don't see any kind of direct from Nintendo in April. So we don't have to wait much longer to find out just how credible this info might be. But that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you think Nintendo will do with the launch and reveal of their next gen hardware? Are you holding out hope for an April Direct at this point in time? Do you think we'll see that and then ultimately see the hardware reveal in June? Or do you think that the next Direct may take place in June and we likely won't see the console featured until October at the soonest? And finally, what games do you hope are part of the Nintendo Switch 2's launch lineup, and will you be trying to pick up one day one if we do get that big reveal at some point this year from Nintendo? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch the video on screen next if you haven't already. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.